Before I start, I need to make two apologies. One, for my dishevelled look, and two, for the angle of this video, because I haven't got my stand. I don't know where it's gone. Hazel tidied it away somewhere, and you know what? It's only where Hazel knows where it is. I have no clue or idea what Hazel does with things. So excuse the shakiness as well, a third apology. Right, so it's almost Halloween, and my channel wouldn't really be a paranormal channel without a bit of a ghost story, would it really? So I thought I would take you back probably around about 6 or 7 years to a house that was in a little village called Finchingfield, which has the esteemed value of being voted England's prettiest village on more than one occasion. In fact, it's a bit of a tourist hotspot. But it's also known, the area itself, purely and simply because that is where Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, used to tout for business. That is where he used to fit innocent people up, men and women alike, mainly women, predominantly ladies. And he would give them some form of, not even a kangaroo court, he would do all sorts of things, and then invariably find them guilty for ridiculous reasons and hang them. So he was really known around that part of East Anglia. He was known to be notorious, and he terrified people. And he was a self-appointed Witchfinder General. He wasn't awarded that title. That was something that he bestowed upon himself. So it'll give you an idea of the type of character the man had. Anyway, I digress. We're going to go back several years, 7 years, to a property that belonged to a friend of mine. And my friend lived there for many years. Him and his wife lived there happily, but haunted. Now, this cottage that they had was several hundred years old. In actual fact, we believe that the original building probably went back 1,000 years, maybe even further than that, because originally it started out its incarnation as a cattle shed, because the people used to live above it, and the cattle, they were so prestigious and such a commodity and rare and expensive at the time that they treated them like gold. So they used to keep their cattle underneath, and the heat would rise above, the heat would rise from the cattle right the way up into the living quarters and keep it nice and warm. And in actual fact, it still had the cattle house floor there, which went back probably 1,000 years. So this house had lots and lots of paranormal activity in it, and quite a lengthy paranormal history. And when they moved in, must have been getting on for 20 years, maybe further than that, maybe even further back than that. It was okay. It started out fine. Then eventually they noticed that things were going missing, that they were placed down, and initially my friends thought that this was down to just being a bit absent-minded in a rush and what have you. And then things started going missing that shouldn't have gone missing, because they were still attached to the person. So, for example, a ring, the odd watch, things have been taken off of the people themselves. They also used to feel the presence of spirits in the property. They'd have the usual bangs and knocks and voices, and I believe they had the odd apparition as well. So they called me in. They called me and the team that I was working with at the time. In actual fact, I went in there with probably about 3 different teams over the course of years. And one of the teams, the first time we went in there, it was very active. Now, to give you an idea of the layout of the property, you walk in, it's still very small. It's still a quintessential, quaint little English cottage in the middle of the English countryside. And it was kind of 2 up, 2 down. So one little small bedroom upstairs. The larger of the 2 bedrooms wasn't really that large. And we noticed that the floor, because obviously it was on the coastal area, that the floor was made out of timbers that would come from wrecks. So they obviously utilised those and turned them into floors and joists for the property. as the time went on, they used these artifacts to build the property up. So we don't know what history or paranormal activity was brought in via those timbers or via any of the building materials that we used to construct the property. So we turned up, and it was a Saturday night, and we got there quite early, and there was a meal laid on for us, which was very, very nice. And we'd been well rested, well watered, well fed, and we were good to go. So my friend and his wife vacated the property. They decided to go out and leave it to us to do what we call a clean investigation. And a clean investigation means that it was a limited number of paranormal investigators, and that there was no chance of any kind of it's a door locking and knocking. It's windy out there, not paranormal. There was no chance of noise pollution or video pollution because everybody knew what they were doing. There were no amateurs there, and everybody knew where everybody was situated in the property. Bearing in mind there was only 3 of us at this time. So we decided to set a camera up, and it was facing the corner of the room. And the reason it was facing the corner of the room, there was a chair there, and this is where my friend had said that the lady who owned the property prior to him had passed away. She'd passed away by that window, not in that chair, but in a similar chair by that window. And so we decided we wanted to know if it was her or not. So we did a setup. We did lock off camera, which means that we set a camera up, had it running permanently, had it fixed to the spot, looking at the spot where she passed away, and we also put some ghost hunting equipment in the place where she would have sat. So, for example, we put a voice recorder. We also put an EMF meter, which would, on video, allow us to pick up on the lights moving up and down on it to give us an indication of some sort of activity, or what we perceive to be activity. So we started out, normal night, lights out, set the equipment up, get everything going, and one of the team said, look, let's go upstairs because the back bedroom, we need to set up something in the back bedroom. And this is where a piece of the old equipment that I used, the old-fashioned or old school equipment that I used, came and proved very, very handy. So we set up in the small back bedroom because it was believed to be a teacher that owned the property. I'm going back a century or so. We believed that we'd set the chalkboard up in there with some chalk, just lay it on the bed and see what we get. Now, this bedroom has got a very, for want of a better description, powerful energy attached to it. For example, one night, my friend had some friends staying over, and the guy got physically pulled out of the bed by his leg. It was about 4 a.m, and obviously it freaked him out. He eventually got back to sleep, I believe, but subsequently what happened was that the time coincided with the time that I believe it was his mother had passed that very same night. So whether it was her, whether it was the spirit that was there giving him some sort of indication, I don't really know. But there has been activity in that room, quite a substantial amount of activity, and that was just one bit. People being prodded and poked in that room, pushed and all sorts of things. I don't think it's a really negative energy. I just think it's something that's frustrated. We're in that person's property, we're in that person's territory, and they don't like it, and it's fair enough. They think they're still alive. Some people maybe don't know that they've passed on, and it's very confusing for them. So they lash out, I guess, which is, I guess, what anybody would do if they found a stranger in their property. So, that kind of activity doesn't necessarily mean dark or detrimental or negative. It just means, or I believe it just possibly means somebody is a bit peed off with somebody going into their house and setting up like they live there, which they do. So we set the chalkboard up in that room. We were all set to go. We went into the main room where the ship's timbers were, and we started asking out. Downstairs, we heard footsteps, and they walked right from underneath us. We were above it, above the lounge bit, and the little dining area was to the right. And we heard the footsteps walk. Then we heard a chair being pulled out. Now the dining area had very, very heavy chairs, very big, thick, strong wooden chairs, and it was on the brick cattle floor, so you could hear it being pulled out quite readily. You could hear it easily being pulled out, and we heard it being tugged and pulled, scraped against the floor. We stopped, looked at each other, and thought, "Okay, who's going down to investigate?" Whereas I was the nearest the door, and it was very tight, I decided that I would just go ahead. I would walk down the stairs and I would investigate. So I went downstairs and I had a voice recorder with me, and I got, I don't know, maybe to the bottom of the steps, and I asked out, "Is there anybody there? Who's that made the noise? Can they make any more noises to indicate their presence? Could they maybe show themselves to me? Could they let me know that they were definitely there?" And I didn't get anything. Well, I didn't think I got anything until we reviewed the footage later on that evening, and also the audio. So what we noticed was that obviously ghosts or spirits we believe to be an electrical energy, or an energy force. So what we heard was a little bit of mumbling on the voice recorder. Then we heard steps coming from where the voice recorder was. Now bear in mind, this is the seat that the lady, or the area, seating area where the lady passed away, on a different chair. And then we heard steps going all the way around on the voice recorder, and that distinctive noise of the big heavy chair being pulled across the cattle floor. So we knew that there was definitely somebody there, but it wasn't living. That person wasn't living, definitely not, because everything had been locked and shut down, and the people that own the property had gone out for dinner, and we knew it couldn't have been them, because it's a sort of property that you couldn't move about it without being noticed. And I was so quick going down the stairs after the initial noise that anything that living that was there would have been seen straight away. There's no possible way it could have gone. And there's only one door in and one door out, and it's like the front door is the back door. So I mean, there is a front door there, but it was all locked up, and there was a great big settee in front of it. Because the house is so small, that's the arrangement they had to have with furniture. They had to use a sofa, and it blocked the front door, so there was no access or exit there. So then we reviewed we thought, well, let's have a look at the video footage. So we looked at the video footage, and you could clearly see, as we were talking upstairs and asking out, the lights on the K2, on the EMF meter, were going mad. They were lighting up and dropping, and lighting up and dropping, and lighting up and dropping. It was manic. Now, another interesting thing about this house is there was very little in the way of radio signal that could get through to it, purely and simply because it was originally a thatched cottage, but in some time in its life it had had a normal slate roof put on. And what they did to strengthen the structure is they put a great big metal frame, and that metal frame had made it impossible almost for signals to get through. I'm talking TV signals, radio signals, any form of signal. In actual fact, they had to have a special setup, and I mean it was special, cost them a lot of money to get some sort of reception on the TV. Because prior to them moving in there, the lady, and I don't think anybody who lived there had ever had a TV in that property. So anyway, we listened, looked at the camera, and you could clearly see the lights going up and down on the K2 meter, on the EMF machine. You could hear the footsteps moving from it. You could hear breathing. But the interesting thing is, as you heard the footsteps get closer and move behind the camera, there was an electrical interference, and the camera went grey screen. First of all, there was lots of white noise and scuffling, but you could still hear the footsteps underneath that. And then as the footsteps moved further away to the dining area, the camera regained its focus again, and we got a clear and crystal picture. The seat was pulled out and pushed back, and when we went to look at that, you could verify that one of the seats had been pulled out, because during our initial walk around, we check everything, take photos, so that if anything or anybody says, well, was that like that, we can then reflect on the photo, or go down the list that we make, and we know whether it was moved or not. So that's how we do it. That's how we avoid any kind of mistakes, or thinking something's moved when it hasn't, or something like that. And then when I reviewed the audio on my voice recorder, when I'd come down the stairs and I'd asked out if there was anybody there, clearly and crisply behind me you can hear, "Get out of the house. Get out." And it was that, I couldn't hear it at the time, but it was that clear, that crisp, and it was unbelievable. It shook us for a little bit, but then we came round and thought, okay, we'll go back again. The second time I went back was a mistake. And I've never told anybody this apart from the people that I was with. The second time, this has never ever happened to me prior, and thank the Lord it's never happened to me again. The second time I went back, I didn't feel that great when I was in the property. I felt very lethargic and a little bit nauseous. And I just put it down to whatever, maybe I was coming down with something, I don't know. And we'd finished the investigation. Everybody had a bad feeling that night. Although nothing had transpired or happened, everybody had a bad feeling. And I came away and I just felt very bad. And I was driving home, I had to pull over. I was almost being sick. I had to take some headache tablets because I was starting to get what I thought was a migraine. I got home. Now I know that everything feels weird when you have a migraine. I know that because I suffer with them. But this was just, I'd never had anything like this. It was almost like I was looking at the world through, I don't know, someone else. It didn't feel like I was looking at the world through my eyes. It was like I was looking at the world, and it sounds very weird and odd, through, well, not necessarily somebody else's eyes, but it was like I was looking at the world through a dreamscape. And it shook me. And it shook me so bad, and I'll be completely honest, I couldn't leave, not the house, I just couldn't leave the bedroom for a week. Almost getting on for a week. I was that shook and that affected by whatever it was, that it was cloying. It wouldn't leave. It was horrible. And then I had to seek the help of my friend who was the exorcist, and he said that he felt that it was possibly a spirit putting their energy onto me. I don't think it was necessarily what you would call it wasn't a manifestation of being taken over. I wasn't being possessed. But it was just maybe a remnant of what that person was like or feeling, or maybe they didn't like me being there and they decided to just make me not very well that evening. I don't know. But it went on for a week, and it was almost as it was like a panic attack, but there was a reason for it, but there wasn't, if you know why. It's very, very odd, a sensation and a experience I never ever wish to repeat. It was horrible. And then it subsided, and it went after my friend had cleansed me, as it were. He said that he felt that it was something just, I don't know, something holding on to me, or something that had got involved with me. I don't know. But he cleared it, and it seemed to get better after that. Now, I can't say whether it's psychosomatic or not, guys, because I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know how these things work. But for me, it was very, very real. It was very, very factual. Now, I've gone on for a long time with this video. It's nearly 20 minutes, so I've got to wrap it up. So that was just a little story for Halloween. I hope you enjoyed that. And, yeah, that's it, really. So look after each other, look out for each other, be there for one another, take good care of each other, and you know those all make sense. So let's do those, guys, as I'm sure you do. 20 minutes and I am out. See you later, guys. Bye.